finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
Welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series, which resumes tomorrow at Penn National with 4 different races. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. Thanks so much for joining us. Ray, there are still a lot of moving parts with this national story about thoroughbred racing. Just this week, more editorials from the LA Times, from the Washington Post. The governor of California issued a press release about horse racing. So can you give us an update? Let's start with California, because that seems to be where all the focus is with the continuing fatalities at Santa Anita.
Yeah, the Stronach group put into place measures in March, reform measures that were designed to make racing as safe as possible. And they went from March till just recently, and they had one fatality. And March 31st, a horse was fatally injured running down the hillside turf course, which they no longer use. And just recently, we had 3 fatal injuries over a 9-day period. The Los Angeles County District Attorney is investigating in cooperation with the California Horse Racing Board and University of California at Davis's necropsies. They've issued, I think, more than 70 subpoenas for trainer records and for veterinary records. California racing has the most stringent drug testing in the country right now, or drug medication rules in the country right now. Drug testing is state of the art. They have 8 veterinarians, I think, working for the California Horse Racing Board, looking at horses in the morning and before races to make sure they're sound. And some apparently slipped through the cracks. They have 16 investigators, which is, I think, probably as many or more than any state has roaming the backstretches. But still, there are injuries, and that's a problem.
And there are actually more reform measures coming with July 1st, for example, more out-of-competition testing, which I think will help. The problem is, that's great, it's happening in California, but it's not happening everywhere else. We still have this, puzzle with all the different pieces, different states and their jurisdictions. We can't seem to get on the same page to do something nationally. In fact, Sally Jenkins this week, a columnist for the Washington Post, said, instead of looking to the Horse Racing Integrity Act, perhaps thoroughbred racing should look within. If you really love the horses, you really care about this sport, you need to do it yourselves, which means creating a national oversight plan. So a commissioner or a league office or whatever. We've talked about this endlessly. Is there any hope, in your opinion, that this might actually come to fruition with all the pressure that's mounting on the industry?
Well, Sally Jenkins' column relied heavily on David Israel, a former sports writer and former California Horse Racing Board commissioner and chairman of the board there, who said that it can be done. I don't know how it can be done, frankly. You can't get people in racing to agree on what day it is when they sit in the same room, or what color the sky is. So how can they agree on measures as serious as they're going to be needing to discuss here? And that's why I support the Horse Racing Integrity Act, but my problem with the legislation is it doesn't go far enough. All it does, from what I can see, is set up a structure to regulate medication, drug testing, penalty phases, and that sort of thing. It doesn't get into licensing, and I think that's one of our biggest issues, which from state to state, they all have different standards of who can be licensed. What does it take to get a trainer's license? I think one of the biggest problems with fatalities in racing, whether it's California or anywhere else, is people are risking horses. They are the bad eggs. There are too many bad people in the game that are using horses as commodities. Now, this is a very small minority, but there's too many of them. All it takes is one rotten apple, and you can see what happens. So, to me, the Horse Racing Integrity Act doesn't go far enough. A national, a league office might be able to do it, but I don't know how you create it.
Yeah, we go back to the old problem we have of too many different interests, and they resist change just to the nth degree. So nothing gets done, and the Horse Racing Integrity Act languishes in Congress mainly because of the Lasix issue, which the horsemen put their foot on the ground in. I thought what you just said about the licensing is really an interesting topic that I haven't heard people talk about. We do need to get the bad eggs out of the sport because they are ruining it for everyone else. All those hardworking people who aren't cheating, who are getting up at 4 o'clock every day and taking care of their horses in the best way possible, never taking a vacation. We always hear about those people, but they're the ones that get hurt by the bad apples in the sport. And I think that would go a long way to fixing racing's problems if we can just get those people out. And that's going to require some due diligence. It's going to require other trainers to, if they see something going on, to say something, because that's a problem. There's just this secret culture on the backstretch that's pervaded for so many years, and it's hard to get out of that. But we need light, not darkness, on the backstretch, because things are going on. We know they're going on. We need to figure out a way to catch these people and get them out of the sport.
And we talked a little bit last week about the legislative hearing in Sacramento, California. Bob Baffert, Mike Smith, and some others testified. Baffert said something really interesting, I thought. He said the trainers will be doing a better job of policing themselves, which means they're not going to be, the responsible trainers are not just going to be looking at their horses, they're going to be looking at other trainers' horses too, with an eye toward, should this horse really be out there? Should he really be breezing? Should he really be entered to race? If there's questions about a horse's soundness or about a trainer's abilities, there's a lot of people that get trainers' licenses that are not horsemen. And we've got to tighten up that part of it. And Baffert said that the trainers themselves are going to start taking some responsibility for that, because we know that in California we're just a couple of fatal injuries away from this becoming way more serious than it is right now.
Yeah, I hope Baffert. I hope he's right. I mean, come on, guys, let's work together on this, and like I said, try to get some of these bad apples out of the game. You mentioned the fatalities, a couple more. The pressure will only increase. Well, the LA Times this week wrote an editorial saying, shut Santa Anita down for now. The senator from California, Dianne Feinstein, also same thing. She said, let's shut it down until we can figure this thing out. I actually think it's probably the smart move right now. There's only about a dozen days of racing left in the meet. Why not just end it early? Don't put yourself in a worse situation. And you have 4 months to work on things, to get things right for October, which is the Breeders' Cup World Championships, where, again, a lot of attention will be placed on the sport.
Yeah, I can see that point of view, but they've put these reforms in place. Rick Arthur, the equine medical director for the California Horse Racing Board, has said that he thinks the horsemen have really done a good job of adapting to these new measures, and they are the strictest medication rules in the country. They're in line with the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities, joint injections, which not that long ago you could give 2 days before a race. Now it's 14 days. That's what the international standards are. Those standards should be in place not just in California but everywhere. And I say, rather than shut down out of fear that something bad is going to happen, let these new rules, let's see how they work. Let's see if they can make racing safer, because I think just delaying it is just kicking the can down the road.
I can see where you're coming from on that. If I'm the Breeders' Cup, though, I am very anxious for the next couple of weeks, because if we have more fatalities, I'm getting concerned about having Santa Anita host that event in October. I'm looking at maybe Churchill Downs hosting it again. I hope that's not the case. I'm just saying the Breeders' Cup could be a factor here as to whether that's going to go forward or not, depending on what happens in the next couple of weeks. And again, to reiterate, there are some other reform measures coming midsummer, like July 1st is the date for some of those things. So it's not just the ones that have been put in place already.
On the other hand, why not have the Breeders' Cup in a state that has the strictest medication rules, the best out of competition testing program, and all of that? again, you're punishing somebody for doing what's right. And I think California is doing what's right, and it's you have to give them time for these measures to I think to show that they can work.
That's a fair point. Let's ask you what you think. We have a poll on our website. Do you think Santa Anita should end the meet early or let it play out and go the last dozen days or so with the current meet? Let us know at PaulickReport.com. Tomorrow at Penn National, the match series resumes with 4 races, 4 different divisions. You have a couple of sprints on the dirt. You have a turf sprint and a turf route. Big day at Penn National, their biggest day of the year.
Yeah, you've got the Penn Mile on turf, which is not part of the match series, but because the match series is on the same day as Penn National's biggest day, you're going to have a lot more eyeballs watching the races. It's good for the match series. It's also good for Penn National. So I think moving these series races to one card at one track has been a real positive so far. And it looks like there's been a lot of rain in the Midwest and the East. It looks like the weather for this weekend is going to be good up at Penn National.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.